Hey guys, welcome to Yesterday's Coffee, the podcast where we chat about fitness, nutrition, and business all over coffee that may or may not have been brewed yesterday. Today, we are talking about a new study that has come up about how eggs are linked to a higher risk of heart disease and early death. So we're going to be diving into the specifics on what they actually looked at and whether or not that information is valid.
Yeah, whether you should be worried about it, because I've had all my clients this week texting me like, oh my God, have you seen this new study? Like, have you seen this study about eggs and cholesterol? And like, am I still allowed to eat my eggs? Like, is this new information? Bottom line is no, this is not new information. This is like the same old stuff that people have been pushing on you since the 80s. And really no new knowledge or like evidence has come forward about anything.
Yeah, it's just a new group of people.
It's just a new study.
Got together, did some of the same old stuff that you'll see all the time.
I would say it was a very long-term study, which normally is a good sign.
Right.
So normally
they used a lot of people.
They used a very large sample size.
It was a long time. And
over 30 years,
you would think, like, with those two things in mind, like,
this would be more realistic, more valid.
Right. And the problem really comes down to you can have as many people involved in a study as you want. If the ways that you're going about producing the study and the ways that you're getting the data are flawed. And the ways that you're
connecting the dots in the report, if those are flawed,
then it doesn't matter how large a sample you're pulling from.
Nope.
So at the basis of any scientific argument, when you're talking about something causing something, and they're not necessarily using the word cause here.
No, they're talking about a correlation or a relationship between the two factors.
Right, and so that's all that's going on here. They're talking about correlative data, which is where you can look at a sample of things and another sample of things, and you basically try to tease out relationships based on these variables. And if there are these things that go hand in hand with each other, like in this case, higher intake of eggs and cholesterol leading to, or supposedly leading to, a higher incidence of cardiovascular disease and everything else, that is what would be considered correlative data. Because what they did here was they collected nutrition information via survey from nearly 30,000 adults.
So they took 30,000 adults and they asked them to report what they eat on a daily basis. And then they checked in with them from time to time over 30 years, getting updated information. But again, all related to a survey. So it's just asking you what you kind of sort of eat on a normal day, which most of you out there know, and all of my clients that I ask, when we're starting out together, I'll ask them what a normal day looks like, and most people are like, well, I don't have a normal day. I eat something different on a daily basis.
That's one of the first questions that I bring up to anybody, and most of the time they're trying to piece together some Frankenstein version of what a regular day might be, but they really have no idea. So the idea that you're going to pull data based on someone's recollection,
someone's memory of what they ate.
How many eggs do you eat in a month or a week or whatever it may be? And then what does your cholesterol intake look like? And I don't know what the actual survey looked like.
No, it was probably asking about servings of animal protein, servings of dairy products, servings of eggs, servings of, all the things that have higher cholesterol. But again, it's all based on memory recall. It's all based on there being such a thing as consistency in someone's diet and such a thing as a normal day. And it's not a good way to collect data. It's not a good way to collect data. You're not controlling for any other factors because they weren't looking at somebody's vegetable intake. They weren't looking at somebody's fiber intake in relation to their cholesterol intake.
Right.
So you just have a cholesterol number and then incidence of cardiovascular disease or other, cardiovascular problems. You're not looking at if they're active or inactive, like we really have an age and we have a cholesterol intake and if they ever had a heart attack. And that's about all the information that we have.
Right. And knowing what we know about cholesterol and knowing what we know about what can contribute to CVD and all-cause mortality. There's so many factors involved in what can contribute to cholesterol levels rising. And from actual research done on cholesterol with people consuming cholesterol, we also know that consuming cholesterol doesn't really affect blood lipid levels. Like we talked about in the other podcast we did on cholesterol specifically, anytime you're consuming cholesterol, the little bit that gets absorbed offsets the amount of cholesterol that your body's already producing naturally. Mm-hmm. So that tiny bit of difference there, if there even is any, is not going to be significant enough to lead to this. And so where you look at a huge study like this and you look at these giant numbers and it's like, oh, they did this with so many people over so many years, this has to be it. But what they're not really telling you here is how many other factors are at play. And so they're picking out a couple different variables that they want to hone in on, but really they're just correlative.
Inaccurate results. Yeah, it's again,
I mean, I wish I had some of the
does not
examples.
Equal causation. My research and statistics professor would be so proud of me. But just because there's a relationship doesn't mean that X causes Y.
Right.
Or whatever. You know? So again, Kyle's saying that there are so many other things, physical activity, stress levels, vegetable intake, just nutrient intake, food quality, what else? Like literally so many different things.
So many things. So if you look at like a correlative study overall, there's so many examples out there to show how ridiculous you can make a correlative result. Mm-hmm. So like you can make everything backwards, but looking at it correlatively, if that's a word, makes it make sense. So like, for instance, you could say that the more people go out and purchase heavy coats, the colder the weather gets. Because if you look at those two data points and you look at it in that respect, they point to one another.
Right? They're related.
More people are buying relationship. Coats. So the weather is going to get colder because more people are buying coats. Whereas we know that it's probably the opposite. It's colder, so people are going out and buying coats.
Yeah. But if we were looking at this in a research sense, we could say, yeah, there's a correlation for sure between, coat purchases and weather changes.
Right. And that's a stupid example, but it goes to show like kind of
shows you the point.
What we're talking about here. And so like I can cherry pick any one of these things and it's going to have some sort of influence there. And there's 100 other variables that they looked at across the board here that didn't have anything to do with one another. There was nothing to report on. And so this one, where there are so many other factors with stress and different hereditary things, different genetic things that go and are involved with any sort of cholesterol readings, that just pulling something out of especially recall-based nutrition data is really just absurd. And so the big thing being that they're trying to like pin it on the egg again to create.
That makes me so angry. So this is my the reason I wanted to even talk about this today at all was the fact that they are including eggs in the title, okay, as a scare tactic, right? But in the actual study, at the very end of their results section, okay, they make a statement saying where does it start? Okay, so the association between egg consumption and cardiovascular disease became completely irrelevant. So became, not significant when they just switched and looked at total cholesterol intake.
Right.
So the egg, at the end of the study, they even admit that the egg really has absolutely nothing to do with it other than the fact that it is a vessel for somebody to eat cholesterol.
Right. Other than the fact that there's cholesterol in eggs.
They could have chosen beef. They could have chosen pork. They could have chosen chicken. They could have chosen dairy products. But they chose to call out the egg for literally no reason. Right. And then at the end of the study, they had to say, because, hello, this is like science and research, they had to say, well, actually, when we just look at total cholesterol intake, eggs have nothing to do with cardiovascular disease.
Right. So like, basically what that's saying is if you have one person that ate 10 eggs a day to get all their cholesterol and another person that ate 0 eggs a day to get all their cholesterol, their results were no different.
Yes.
So the fact that the egg specifically appears in the title,
yes, is so frustrating because it's so nutrient dense.
It's so ridiculous. And they name these studies after the results are compiled.
Yes.
Like, you don't come up with the title and then say, we're going to do the study.
Eggs. What probably happened was they wanted to find a relationship between eggs and cardiovascular disease. And again, because this is science and you can't be like completely
unbiased.
No, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, you can't just completely lie in a research study. Like, you have to tell the results of the study, right? So I think what they were trying to do, they wanted to find a relationship between eggs and cardiovascular disease. And when they didn't, then they had to change tracks and go, oh, well, okay, so it's total cholesterol or egg intake because eggs are related to cholesterol.
Exactly. Yeah, it becomes the indirect way of saying that eggs cause cardiovascular disease.
Which is basically just saying that their hypothesis was wrong, which I'm sure had something to do with egg intake and cardiovascular disease.
Yeah, I'd love to know who put the study on. I didn't
does it
even
say
look
what their
into
hypothesis
that.
was? I don't think so.
Objective was to determine the associations of dietary cholesterol or egg consumption.
But they had to add the cholesterol after the fact. I know that was added after the fact. Yeah. Their hypothesis started with eggs. I can tell you that.
Right.
Like, I'm sure they did, and then they were like, oh, wait, no, we're wrong. We didn't actually find anything, so now we have to change the objective, and we have to change the title. And
yeah, I mean, and again, that's total speculation on our part. But
yes, but knowing how research works, that would be my best guess, was we had an idea and we were wrong, but we were going to publish the study and we have to like fix it somehow.
Ad hoc hypothesis change.
No, and I love at the very end. So at the very end of all of this, when they're kind of going over their conclusion, they state that these results should be considered in the development of the dietary guidelines and updates, which, again, if you're calling out eggs, I just think that it's so much like bullcrap. Like, it's so annoying to me saying like, oh, you know, we're so high and mighty, like we researched this one thing based on like people's food journals, right, which are highly inaccurate, and we think that you should change like all of the dietary guidelines for America based on this.
Well, and let's remember that what actually raises cholesterol is inflammation.
Yes.
And let's also remember that a lot of high cholesterol foods are really crappy foods. So if you've got like very heavily processed...
Wait, high cholesterol foods are not always crappy foods.
No, I didn't say they're always crappy foods. I said there are a lot of examples of really crappy high cholesterol foods. You look at like ultra processed meats, like hot dogs and things of that nature. And
well, but an egg is one of the highest cholesterol foods you can eat, like based on its
No, I'm not saying
like, weight.
Highest. No, I'm saying there are crappy high cholesterol foods.
Yeah, sure.
That's all I'm saying.
Sure.
Because what they looked at here was cholesterol.
Yes.
And when you accounted for the egg...
Oh, I see what you're saying.
The egg wasn't worse. So what I'm saying is you can attribute a lot of these numbers to people just eating awful foods.
Yes. If you're getting all your cholesterol from hot dogs all day versus eggs all day.
Right, and that's what I'm saying.
The egg people are probably still better off health-wise, but this study didn't look at the difference between what sources of cholesterol you're getting.
And how much were they exercising? And what were their stress levels? And
do they
literally
eat anything green? Like, just...
Right.
And if you guys haven't listened to our cholesterol podcast, you should go back and listen to it now.
Yeah, definitely.
Because if this is something you're legitimately worried about, eggs are not your enemy and eggs are not your worst problem. There are lots of other factors.
Right.
But yeah, I wanted to make sure we went over this because I've been getting a lot of questions and we're just like circling back to the whole like fear of the egg. Like it just keeps happening in cycles throughout the decades.
Yeah.
Eggs are amazing nutrient dense sources of, well, nutrients, of vitamins and minerals.
Right. And what you'll find common among any study that points to high cholesterol and heart disease or even like high fat heart disease, it all points back to these correlative studies where you're going based on dietary recall with how many thousands of people over how many years, and they're drawing correlations. anytime you get into a study where it actually looks at people consuming this food over a certain amount of time, or the effect that that food has on the body in both acute and chronic doses, there's no evidence to support this.
Yeah.
So when you look at the actual evidence based on what that food individually is doing in the body, there isn't anything to support it. It's only when you take these broad brushstrokes, you pool all this information together, and then you tease out these trends that you see anybody able to report on this type of information.
Yeah. What I want to do is I kind of want to do a little research and find out if there have been studies where they actually control the variables and they say everybody works out, X minutes per week, everybody eats X servings of vegetables per day, and then this group eats, X milligrams of cholesterol and this group doesn't. I would love to see research on that kind of study where like other variables have been more controlled and see if there's a difference. They might exist, but those aren't the ones that get talked about.
Right. No,
But I would like to see if that actually is a thing.
Well, no, that's what a lot of the studies were that we talked about.
Before? Were they?
Where the actual variables were controlled.
Yeah.
And then there was no reason to be able to connect those two dots.
So they didn't find any relationships.
Which is what causative data is all about. If you control everything, and this is the one variable being cholesterol, and my marker that I'm trying to track is incidence of cardiovascular disease or increased cholesterol in the blood, then if I'm not seeing this go up and this go up at the same time, or this is going up and this is staying the same, then what that tells me is there's no link there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but again, those aren't the ones that get picked up by the media and published which I don't understand why, because people love eggs. Well, no, so why wouldn't you want to read something that says eggs are good for you?
No, because what's happening is right now the biggest craze in the world is keto. So anybody that can put out any sort of information against keto is obviously going to get clicks. Yeah. They're going to get attention.
Oh, it's so annoying.
And that's the world that we live in. So
I wonder if these people publishing these things really believe it, or do they just publish things to get traction or to get traffic
I'm
to
sure
the website?
I'm sure there are plenty of instances, not to speak for any of these authors, but there are plenty of instances where people have their own ideas, and that's what guides their research, and that's how they kind of form these opinions and how they decide how they're going to do the research. Now, granted, this has been over a long period of time, so this is kind of more of a coincidence that this is coming out with keto being all the rage right now.
Yeah.
But it's not all that uncommon to see.
Well, but maybe they chose to end the study now because keto is popular. Maybe the researchers were let's cut it now so we get more.
Again, I don't know enough
more
on the background.
Traffic.
Yeah.
I don't know. Everything's so set up anymore. I don't know.
If there's anything to learn, it's never take a study at face value. Mm-hmm. I don't care what side it's on.
Yeah, we've talked about before.
So always look into it. Always understand how they actually set it up, what they were measuring. Another thing that I learned in statistics was you can make statistics point in any direction that you want to.
Oh, 100%.
If you run enough tests, you can find some sort of statistical analysis that will provide you with information that supports your claim directly or indirectly pretty easily. So,
which is why I laugh at all the people who preach only basing, their programs and ideas off of evidence and research studies and all of this stuff, evidence-based, things, when you can pick and choose what pieces of evidence that you want to use to support whatever you believe.
Right.
So all these people out there preaching science, it's okay, well, science can be influenced very strongly.
Yeah, and it has been.
And it
ever since its
every
inception,
day,
so
every single day.
It's absolutely not free from bias, but yeah.
Which is why it's so hard to get the right information.
Absolutely. So that's the latest on eggs and cardiovascular disease as told by current research. So if there is anything else that you guys would like us to talk about in the future, topics to cover, questions you may have, feel free to send them our way. You can find me at hypertrofit.com. You can find Alexa at therootedrd.com. And we will see you guys again next week.
We'll see you guys next week.